Signs.
Symbols.
Signs and signification.
Ferdinand de Saussure.
Claude Lévi-Strauss.
Structural Criticism.
Structuralism is the observation of utilization of linguistics, the study of language and semiotics, the study of science and system, to portray the major ideas in a piece of work. Based primarily on linguistic theories of Ferdinand de Saussure, structuralism considered as a language of signification and system, where the elements are understandable in their relation to each other and to the system. Proponents in structuralism. First, Ferdinand de Saussure came up with this idea that language is a science system made up of unchanging patterns and rules. Second, Claude Lévi-Strauss. He introduced the binary opposition in structuralism. Binary opposition is the study of opposite and how they are interplay and interact with each other in the text. For example, good versus evil and black versus white. History of Structuralism. Structuralism appeared in academia for the first time in the 19th century and then reappeared in the second half of the 20th century, when it grew to become one of the most popular approaches in academic fields concerned with the analysis of language, culture, and society. The work of Ferdinand de Saussure concerning linguistics is generally considered to be a starting point of 20th century structuralism. The term structuralism itself appeared in the works of French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss and gave rise in France to the structuralist movement, which spurred the work of thinkers in diverse fields such as historian Michael Foucault, the political scientist Louis Althusser, the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, as well as the structural Marxism of Nikos. Almost all members of this so-called movement denied that they were part of it. Structuralism is closely related to semiotics. In 1960s, Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure influenced this theory through the examination of language as a system of science called semiology.
Semiology. It is the study of signs and symbols, and it consists of two parts, signifier and the signified. Signifier. It is the material form of something that can be heard, seen, smelled, touched, and tasted, while the signified is the mental concept associated with it. To further understand the signifier and the signified, let's take this example. The crown. The crown itself is the signifier because it is something that we can see, and this decorative object shaped like a circle is basically worn on the head of a king or queen, while the signified meaning of it are the following: wealth, ruler, royalty, and power. These are the things we associate out of the crown. Another example, the color red. Color red is the signifier because it is something that we can see and it's basically one of the colors, while people often associate red with war, failure, cruelty, strength, or love, which became the signified meaning of it because it is a concept that the people drew out of the color red. Take a look at this last example, the dove. The dove itself is the signifier because it is something that we can see and is one of the classes of birds, while the concept that people drew out of the dove are feminism, purity, grace, and peace, which became the signified meaning of it. In simple words, signifier is just like the denotative meaning of something, while the signified is the connotative meaning of it. Strengths of structural criticism. This theory thus focuses on the author's intent and thus focuses on the objective interpretation of it, without clouding the text with a subjective or emotional interpretation into it. The weaknesses of structural criticism is that it is difficult to know who controls the meaning of the text. Second, readers looks only at the linguistic structure and is not permitted to have an emotional attachment to the text. And lastly, it is not open to different interpretations.
Now, let us apply structural criticism in the poem entitled My Heart Keeps Up by William Wordsworth by identifying the language being used or the author's intent as well as the symbol being used. My Heart Leaps Up by William Wordsworth. My heart leaps up when I behold the rainbow in the sky. In the first lines of the poem, Wordsworth explained his reaction to a rainbow. It's obvious that the poet has a deep affinity for the natural world. He says, "My heart leaps up." This is an extreme reaction to a not uncommon meteorological event. Rainbows are, universality, regarded as beautiful, but I would argue that the rainbow in this poem is a symbol for nature as a whole. I would also argue that Wordsworth's reaction, as I said before, is somewhat extreme. Most grown men do not react with the same level of enthusiasm to a rainbow. As the poem goes on, however, he will argue that we should all share his sense of wonder. So was it when my life began, so is it now I am a man. In this stanza, the poet describes that he has always felt the same visceral joyous reaction to a rainbow and to nature as a whole. His sense of wonder began when he was born and persisted throughout his childhood into his adulthood. Wordsworth has been a fan of nature from the very start. So be it when I shall grow old, or let me die. Wordsworth gets a bit extreme in these lines. First, he states that he hopes to continue to be mesmerized by nature well into old age. Then he says, "or let me die." The fairly unambiguous interpretation here is that the poet would rather die than to find the world around him boring and bereft of beauty. That would be preferable to becoming a jaded cynic who cannot grasp the wonder of nature. The child is the father of the man. This is perhaps the most important line of the poem. In this typical fashion, Wordsworth gives a seemingly straightforward metaphor, which actually has enormous implications. All people were once children, so the line makes some sense on that level. We come from children as children come from their parents. The greater implication is that, like a parent, a child can be a great teacher and a great role model. Children are constantly experiencing the world as if for the first time. They have an unending sense of wonder and awe regarding nature and, indeed, life itself. Wordsworth is saying we should be like children in this way and that we should hold on to our children the sense of the world. And I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. In these last two lines of the poem, Wordsworth closes by reiterating this idea that he hopes to continue being in awe of nature. He wants every day to be tied together by an ongoing theme of love for the world. The words natural piety imply that the poet considered his feeling for nature to be so reverent that seeing a rainbow was an almost religious experience. After knowing the author's intent in the poem, now let us examine the symbol that is being used in the poem. Rainbow. Rainbow is the symbol that is being used in the poem, and it symbolizes life. For William Wordsworth, life is a blessing that came from God.
To conclude,
Ferdinand de Saussure founded structuralism as he considered it as the system of sign and signification.
and lastly, structural criticism is the observation of utilization of linguistics and semiotics to portray a major ideas in a literary piece.